My name is Whitney Bilyeu. I am the Vice President of Sales for Texas CEO Magazine. I want to welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited to have partnered with Zilker Media to bring you this 4-part online event series that is meant to walk you through thought leadership marketing and crafting your brand. Today's particular installment is focused on building your influence online with social media strategies to build your network. And with that, I would like to turn things over to Zilker Media's Brand Strategy Director, Nicole Williamson. Nicole, welcome.
Thank you so much, Whitney. And we're so excited to partner with Texas CEO on this wonderful event. So I'm excited to welcome our wonderful panelists today to talk about all things social media and online branding. So I'm going to do a quick introduction for each panelist, and then we're going to dive into our conversation. Just a quick note on the chat, please put any questions you have into the chat or Q&A feature. We're going to leave some time at the end of today's panel to go through them and answer all your questions. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to introduce Wendy Papazan. Wendy leads real estate teams in Austin and Houston, Texas, as well as Minneapolis and St. Paul, Minnesota. Since 2009, she and her team have helped 1,600 families, totaling more than $500 million in homes sold. In addition to her real estate business, Wendy is the co-host of the popular Empire Building podcast and is a sought-after real estate speaker. She is passionate about seeing women succeed in business and helping everyone grow their wealth, which led to her co-founding Her Best Life. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Next, we have Mason Arnold. Mason is a serial entrepreneur with fresh food, organics, and sustainability always at the core. He founded Earth Action Landscaping, Greenling.com, and his current venture is CC's Veggie Co., which landed the #3 spot in 2019 on the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing private companies in the US. He was also named Eco Leader of the Year by the Austin Business Journal in 2010. Welcome, Mason.
Thanks for having me.
And then last but not least, we have Elizabeth Davis. Elizabeth is an executive leader and CEO with a demonstrated track record of successfully starting up, scaling, growing, and exiting successful startup organizations. She is also a professional speaker, the Austin chapter chair of Women's Presidents Organization, Techstar mentor, certified EOS implementer, and facilitation ideation expert. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation today. Obviously, personal branding is something I'm extremely passionate about, and all of y'all have had a lot of experience with this. So let's dive into our first question. And Wendy, we'll start with you. So what social media channels have really provided the most value for your personal brand and why?
Well, I'm 50 years old, or I'm about to be 50 this year. So Facebook is where a lot of my audience lives. And that's where I started my social media journey. Gosh, I don't even know, 12, 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of migrated to Instagram. So those are really my two main platforms. I've dabbled with everything else, but I found that it's better to dive deep into one or two social media channels that work for you rather than kind of spread yourself thin.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth, what about you? What have you found the most valuable?
Yeah, my target clients typically are CEOs and leadership teams. And so most of them congregate in LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So that is where I spend most of my time as far as posting. And then I do follow people on Instagram because I like to know a little bit about them more on a personal basis. So, right. But I don't post too much there myself.
Yeah, LinkedIn is such a great platform just to kind of develop those relationships with executives and other thought leaders. It's one that we've really enjoyed seeing grow to be such an incredible platform over the past few years. So Mason, same question to you. What do you feel like has been the most valuable social media channels for you?
Yeah, I think the two answers kind of highlight whether you're geared towards consumers or businesses. And so if you're geared towards businesses, LinkedIn can be a really valuable interaction tool. Towards consumers, I follow a very similar path to Wendy, although I also had a stint on Twitter for a while. And when you're really engaged with Twitter, it can be a really great channel. But as soon as I dropped off for a year or two and then started to post a little bit here and there was zero engagement. And so I still follow. Twitter is where I get most of my news. because it's so fast and so immediate. And if I see a big wreck or a bunch of cop cars somewhere, I go to Twitter to find out, what happened. But when it's for engaging with people, I started on Facebook and have kind of migrated to Instagram to get rid of a lot of the diatribes.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a really good point with Twitter, just on how it continues to be a heavy media platform and so many journalists are on Twitter. So that's one we really like to prioritize and talk about using to engage with media and different outlets online. So, but yes, it does. It's one of those that you got to be on it and engaging to keep it alive and well. With social media, there's sometimes a lot of skepticism about getting on it and being active, and especially in this day and age. I kind of open this up to everyone, but did anyone really have that kind of skepticism to jumping on and creating more of that online presence at the beginning?
Go ahead, Wendy.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had a mental block on, for some reason I wanted to post on LinkedIn, but there was just this block. And finally, I had one of my business associates that was in town spending time with me. And she just made a challenge. She said, in the next 2 hours, you and I are both going to do post, and then we're going to keep it going. And that was like the floodgates. Once I'd actually done it once, then it seemed like it was just a real natural.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I had the good fortune of starting my first business right when Facebook was getting up and running. So I was actually really intentional and used Facebook quite a bit, not only to build my own brand. And I've started several businesses since then. And I think it's, I would just say that it's important to actually go out and grab all of your names on every social media platform. If you haven't done that, if you're just beginning your social media journey, even if you're not on them, you want to do that. So just make sure that you're there. But when I started my my first business, Facebook was just starting up, and I used it for, back then it was really novel and easy to direct message people and communicate. It was like kind of how LinkedIn is now. And so I was always very purposeful. I was like, I'm going to post, I had standards for myself. I'm going to post every day, and that's really how I built my own personal brand. And it's what's interesting about Facebook is that they allow you to look back at those memories. And sometimes I think that, when you have a lot of influence, people around you are like, oh, you're so lucky. And all these people follow you. And it's nice to look back 10, 11, 12 years ago and realize that that first post you made, or even the 100th post you made, had like 2 likes, right? So it's that consistent effort over time that actually is going to yield you results in anything, but especially around building your personal brand on social media.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was also free back then to reach all of your followers, whereas now the business pages, they charge you anything more than reaching 5%. And so I find it's critical to cross post on, and which also means that, my personal page is an extension of business and vice versa. And, like Wendy, initially I was intentional about it, and then that's never been able to go away. Actually, I tried to do that in terms of skepticism. I mean, I've been up and down, and at times I've been skeptical and took a break from social media altogether and felt like it wasn't, adding anything to the world. And then I, come back because that engagement is worth something, I think, to anyone, especially anyone where their personal brand is a part of their career.
Yeah. Well, and, I'm reading like actors and actresses, they're totally focused on their Instagram following because they know that if they're competing with another actor and it's basically they're a tie, for the role, the actor with the bigger influence is going to get the role. So I think all of us, when we're building our personal brand, not building our businesses, like that's very different. Building a brand for our business is different than your personal brand, and they can be intertwined. But, for a lot of us, we're going to start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 businesses by the end of our life. And the mistake that I see a lot of people doing is they build their brand around their business. And you really need to talk about your personal brand, which is what we're
Right.
talking about today. So that whether you're an actor or you sell vegetable noodles or you're in real estate or whatever you do, your influence carries you through that. You know, it's a huge part of your success, or it can be.
Yeah, 100%. And Wendy, you brought up a really good point on owning your name across all these platforms. And Rusty Shelton talks about this all the time, is making sure you own your URL. I can't stress that enough, of getting that domain. And for your kids, just buy them if you haven't already. Rusty even goes as far to say, like, if it's not available, like maybe name your kid something else, because those pieces of real estate online are so valuable. So thankful I have an H in my name, because mine all got to be super cheap. So those key differentiators can really make a difference.
It helps if you have a weird last name, but if you're Elizabeth Davis, you've probably, you got to fight for that.
Absolutely. So, you know, on social media content and all the different types of platforms, the ones that y'all use specifically, what types of content right now are you seeing work really well for your personal brands? And Mason, we'll start with you.
For me, I'd end up with kind of short form text with either visual or video in terms of engagement with my community. And then what I engage with most that I want to get into doing more is kind of the video with text overlay on it. Those, I think a lot of people like me, we end up browsing social media without sound, because either we're listening to something else, or we're in a space where it's not really, polite to be listening to your social media. And so the video with the text overlays to me are what really get my attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth, what about you?
Same. I found that short videos, 1.5 to 3 minute max, definitely have the text over it. And, and if you're not comfortable with doing videos, there's a lot of places you can learn, of course, all the YouTube. But I actually, during COVID, found an opportunity, because of a little bit of free time comparatively.
Right.
And I took an online course, Amanda Horvath, who is in Austin, and got very, very comfortable with all of the various, lighting and background and what's powerful. And so to me, the adding that video component has been significant, especially being able to interview a client or interview really anyone, and having that being a post. And then the second thing I've found most important is a picture with a caption. And so I'm always looking, when I'm walking down the street, something interesting that I can take a picture of and then correlate to a business. And then third is just a post of words, but I find that those are almost so insignificant that I try to not do those type of posts anymore.
Gotcha. And Wendy, what about you?
I would say right now my main engagement is through stories, Instagram or Facebook stories. And, if you've got your Instagram and Facebook linked, it's easy to never really have to get on Facebook and just stick to Instagram. And I get, every story I do on Facebook, I probably get 1,000 to 2,000 views. So
that's awesome. Yeah. One thing we've seen even on LinkedIn specifically is like really long text posts. That was a recent change that we were really surprised by, that have performed really well, and different hashtags and things like that. But I think even at the end of the day, the more personalized content, the more you can show like who you are, your story, the person behind the message is where it makes the most difference. And Elizabeth, I love that you go and you take pictures of things that you see, and that's so true and personal to you. And it definitely doesn't look like, you've been producing it over and over. It's just like real and in the moment. Time and time again, we see that performs so well. So I love that you take the time to do that.
Yeah. Well, and people want to be connected to you. And Brene Brown has really taught us that, being authentic, being vulnerable with who you are, especially as a business owner, it's not all just like hustle and grind and you're going to make $1 million. It's like show your successes and also show your failures and be vulnerable. And then people feel truly connected to you. And that's part of building your personal brand, is people want to know the real you.
Right. I think we saw that even more with COVID, is how much people wanted to connect when we couldn't connect in person. And so we saw that more authentic self online, so people could engage with that and just be really real in those moments. So absolutely. On your content strategy, I'd love to hear how maybe it's impacted your business or just overall thought leadership. So leads, PR opportunities, any potential book deals, things like that. So Elizabeth, let's start with you and on the impact of social media for your business.
Yeah, the post is just the beginning of the relationship.
Right.
So I do have notifications when people comment, and I make sure that usually twice a day, I'll go in and comment on everything that someone has posted, because it's actually, number one, it's important to start the conversation. So when you do a post, if you can say, what do you think? Or post, give me the best book you've ever read. So they're actually starting to engage. Then being able to comment on what they've posted. And then I reach out a lot of times to the people that have actually put a comment, and in order to get connected or to have a Zoom call. So that's kind of that's my universe of communication. And that's how I actually generate a lot of the leads for my company. Because I also believe, because the videos that I post both on social media and my website, that's how I get a lot of those speaking engagements, because people, it's a little lower risk because they can already see that you can handle that. So for me, it's multi-purpose, and it's well worth a lot of investment in time.
I love that. I love that you're getting speaking engagements from showcasing that online. That's an incredible way to use that. Wendy, what about you? How have you seen it impacted, especially in real estate? There's so much you could do there.
Yeah, no, well, I would agree with Elizabeth. It's the tip of the lead funnel, and
Right.
we have a massive email database, which is the core of our business. And I'm very intentional about that, because as we all know, any social media platform could change or go away at any minute. And if you're dependent on 100% of your business coming from social media, that's a pretty scary place to be. But I would echo what Elizabeth said, which is go back, engage with your people. We get a lot of what we call agent to agent referrals, and so we can directly tie last year about $850,000 in revenue from some of those relationships through Facebook. And as I'm building this other business, Her Best Life, for sure, I'm doing it with 10 other women who own massive businesses around the country. And it's basically being built through our influence. And a lot of that has to do with social media. But I would just say, again, that's the tip of the spear. How can you engage people? How can you get their email address, their phone number, all of those things? Because those are things that you're always going to be able to control,
Right. So. Owning those contacts are definitely.
Because I've had people, I don't know about you guys, but I've had friends who their Facebook has disappeared.
Yeah.
And sometimes it comes back and sometimes it doesn't. So
yeah, absolutely. And Mason, what about you? You're the serial entrepreneur. I'd love to hear how social media has played an impact in your business.
Yeah, and kind of building on what they said, one of the things that I do when I am launching a new business, before I even launch, I invest in SEO as well. And so to me, the search engine optimization allows people to find my properties online, whether it be personal or the business. And, usually launching out at the personal one, and my personal website is tied to the businesses. And so there's link backs, and I'm able to get a little more eyeballs for the business through that. And then that follow-up is social media. And I probably underutilize kind of the business crossover with the social media part of kind of my funnels, where I'm a little bit more personal. And sometimes when I announce things that I'm excited about or new launches, people respond that they didn't even know I had started a new business. And but I would prefer to be a little bit on that side of things than on the overly solicitous side of things as well. So it's a tough balance to find, but like Wendy said, the authenticity is key, and I just try to be myself out there, and hope that attracts the right kind of people.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think it's like everything these days, it's like, what value are you providing, right? Even if you're, even if you're putting a funny meme up there, there's value that you're providing. And, you know, there are lots of things that you can do on social to get people's email address, engage with them. And usually it has to do with providing value. So,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And Macy brought a good point on SEO, you know, even just keeping updated profiles and posting, that just helps your name in Google search, and those profiles show up. That's what we want. We want when you go to search your name on Google. And if you've never done that, I promise it's not weird. You should do that. You should know. Just
I think
what
I've got 2 spots on page 1 that are not me, that I'm working to kick off that other Mason Arnold, but he's a pretty good football player for a Jesuit college. So
come on, Mason.
he gets a little juice, but
You
I'm
probably
working
can't go
on
head
it.
to head with him, though.
Probably not. I think he's a bit bigger.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So those page 1 results are so fantastic. Again, owning those websites, posting on social media, all brings you back to that. And, you know, and Wendy talking about how to gain those email addresses, that should always be a big part of your strategy. Because at the end of the day, we don't know what'll change in social media. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But as things change, you're going to want those emails. So using that lead generation opportunity.
Email is not dead.
100%. It is not dead. 100%. Yeah, go ahead.
One follow-up. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, I was just going to say about the, there's lots of social media content does pop up on Google as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, one thing that I ended up having to battle, there was some guy named Mason Arnold in Virginia that went to jail for like dog fighting. And I had to like work really hard to get, because then people were posting about it and it was showing up number 1 on Google for me. And I contacted the courts and was like, can you at least put his middle initial in there or something? Because this is showing up when people are looking for me. And, lo and behold, the courts did it and it ended up falling off completely from the search rankings. But it's something that needs to be monitored as closely as social media.
Yeah, that's taking full control of that ownership right there, going as far to call the court.
I can be a little OCD at times.
Yeah. Well, and also Google My Business. We started a home repair and remodeling company, and we were able to scale that during COVID, essentially using Google My Business, because Google My Business likes that content. So if you have a Google business page, you should be feeding that content. If it's whether it's photos or videos or they don't really care. But the more you can feed that content, the more when somebody goes to their phone and they search for a handyman in Austin, you're going to pop up because you're the one that's feeding Google that content.
Right. And Elizabeth, I know you had something you wanted to add on to.
I was just going to say, one of the things is to also think about your engagement strategy on the platform. Again, I can only speak to LinkedIn, but I made a decision early on that I was only going to accept invitations from people that I had either spoken to or met. And the reason I did that is I wanted to make sure that anybody that was in the first level were people that there was a credibility level. And that was a conscious decision on my part. But I know that there's other strategies, which is just to connect to every single person you humanly can. But because of that engagement process, I've been able to, when someone reaches out to me, say, hey, I don't connect unless I've either spoken to you or met. Would you like to connect? Right? Yeah. Would you like to have that, 15-minute call just to get to know? And I found that, especially in COVID, was just an amazing way of engaging with people without being able to, meet or do any network.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, do you do that across platforms or just LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is really the only one. Instagram, I think I kind of just find people that are interesting because I just like pictures and stuff. But the LinkedIn is where I actually focus business.
So LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, do you just let anyone who wants to connect, do you connect with them? Because I think everyone has a different strategy and it's per platform, I think.
Right.
Facebook, I'm one of those that left. Instagram, it's pretty much open.
Kudos to you.
LinkedIn is very specific in business. And those are my 3 that, I've had some experience with.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, you brought a good segue because engagement strategy is where we're going next. So that's really important. Engagement is one of those pieces that is often forgot about on social media. You can't just post and leave. It doesn't do anything if you do that. So I'd love to hear from each of you. And Mason, maybe we start with you on what does your engagement strategy look like? How much time are you blocking to engage, and maybe what's your approach per channel to make it really authentic?
Yeah. So, my strategy, I've seen, watched other people across the board, and I feel like when you respond with words to every single comment, then to me, it feels like it's a little bit kind of overreaching. And so what I end up doing is one of the little, either a like or a laugh or something, a response to everyone, and then ones where a real conversation could happen. That's when I actually respond to the comments on it. And I find it only takes a few minutes per post, as long as it's not political or, community controversy engaged.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, what about you?
I post a lot, so I don't always have time to go back and engage with everything that I post on, but some things that are important to me, like if I post a kind of authentic post and people are commenting a lot, like there might be, 50 to a couple hundred comments, I would go back and engage with some of those that I thought were relevant. And sometimes it's nice, just go back and kind of do what Mason's saying is like everything. I don't really have a strategy around it, honestly. And the reality is I like social media. I like to engage with people. It sounds terrible, but I kind of like having a lot of surface relationships with people that I hardly know.
For sure.
I'm kind of good at it. I have the brain where I can kind of maintain a lot of those relationships, and people feel like they know me. It's been very beneficial for all my businesses. So that's a part of it too. I know there are people listening who are like, I just hate that. It's a distraction. I can go in and get out like that. And a lot of people, they get sucked into it. So depending on your personality, I think really is you probably need to have a strategy for it that makes sense. And for some people, they just need help. They need people who can curate that for them, actually do the work. My assistant does some of it for me. I'll be the one that goes back in and engages with people, but it just really depends on you,
Yeah.
So
are any of y'all approaching any of these channels by engaging with maybe those you're not connected with? On LinkedIn, you can often see people in your feed, and Instagram as well, that you don't know. So do any of y'all take that approach to maybe following a certain hashtag and engaging with, someone outside of your current community?
I've had my best luck on LinkedIn has been hiring talent. Not even running an ad, but finding people that I'm connected to and just asking them, hey, who do you know that might be a fit for this job? Especially right now, we've got a major upheaval in talent in Austin and all over the country because people are just dissatisfied with everything kind of right now. Yeah. And I think the companies are taking the brunt of it. So, LinkedIn is an incredible way to take advantage of that. And really every platform, as far as hiring goes, Yeah,
I probably engage in two ways. One, doing invitations to events through LinkedIn, private message, that always seems to work. And of course, I'm keeping very aware of who's looked at my profile, because it's a really great way for me to identify, a CEO that has looked me up, and it typically is not very creepy at that point to be able to reach out to them, because they know why I'm coming and saying, hey, I just noticed this. Would you like to, spend some time? So, I think you could be very strategic in that type of approach to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we have a question, and this may actually answer it. All of you are extremely busy and starting new businesses and running multiple businesses at once. How do y'all make the time to do this, to be active on social media and make it a priority? What are some of y'all's individual strategies to do that? Let's start with you, Wendy.
Well, like I said before, it's time blocking, right? There's time blocking for everything. I live by my schedule, and I tend to look at. So I spend about probably 90 minutes, an hour to 90 minutes every Sunday, kind of planning my week. So I use something called the 411, and it's basically I look over all my goals for the month and the year, and then depending on what I've got, I plan my goals for the week, and I pull out my calendar at the same time. And so depending on what I've got going, I might have an investor meetup. So we have like an investor meeting tonight. So just kind of planning for those big things. Generally, that's my strategy around that is on Sunday to know kind of when I need to do that for the week. But then also, like I said, I enjoy doing it. So sometimes it's more spontaneous. I might be like Elizabeth and be walking down the street and see something that's cool and take a picture of it and kind of go from there. So it's like a dual strategy.
Yeah. Mason, what about you?
Yeah, I tried to, I'd say I'm re-emerging on social media right now. I've been coming out of the phase where I was taking a break. And so I do try to integrate it and, share things that I think are interesting. So when I come across something that's interesting, either take a picture or make a mental note of it. And then I'm one of those people in the morning after my coffee and getting the brain going. Social media doesn't require a whole lot of horsepower out of my brain, so I kind of start with it at the beginning of the day, and then I'll end with it at the end of the day as well.
Yeah, that's great. Elizabeth, how do you manage it to keep it a priority?
Yeah, I'm the same. I definitely have to schedule the time, and it does take planning. But for me, it's a limited number of high impact posts, and so that allows me to be able to keep up with it. And I try to integrate it more into my life, as far as, like you said, if I see a picture, but also who am I going to be meeting with that week,
right?
And then make that actually the topic of the post. And, I work with leadership teams. There's typically a nugget that comes out of one of the sessions. And so being able to then get on video and say, hey, here's a lesson learned, being able to talk about what's going on at the COVID dome and how to break through it. So I just feel like I try to just have it as things that come up in the natural day-to-day of executing my business.
Yeah. And I would add just onto that, quality is way better than quantity, and making sure it's good, meaningful content that represents who you are and your personal brand. Another thing is repurpose content and create maybe a blog post or a lengthier article and use that to create multiple pieces of content. We always love working smarter, not harder. We live by that. So everyone we know is extremely busy. So there are definitely ways to do that, to have a lot of social media content come from one piece of content that's longer.
Well, and I was, I don't know if you all follow Brandon Turner, but he's one of the co-hosts of the Bigger Pockets podcast. And I was noticing he had so much video content on his Instagram. And I was like, wow, this is he just is like a content machine, And because I've been wanting to do more video content, and I reached out to him and I said, Brandon, what do you do? And he said, well, I just hooked up a video camera in my office, and I hired a VA in the Philippines full time to edit video. And he's like, I'm constantly speaking and talking on the phone. And so he just basically is like recording himself all the time. And then this VA takes the nuggets out and turns it into Instagram bites.
Wow.
Which is so genius, because I can bet that the four of us are doing that constantly, right? And so why reinvent the wheel if you're speaking or whatever? And if you're speaking, even this, what we're doing right now, there's all these nuggets, and here we've got 45 minutes of content that could be repurposed for all of our social media, and none of us are recording it. So I thought that was brilliant.
I think they are recording it.
Well, they are recording it, but I'm not recording it here.
Yeah,
right.
No, that's so true. Another thing we've done is even just like podcast interviews, taking those audio clips and breaking them up into small little chunks that you can share over time with a great background. And like Mason, like you were talking about, putting some text overlay with it that, for people who don't want to turn on the audio, that can create so much content from 1 hour-long interview, which helps so much.
Well, Dan Sullivan has the, delegate and elevate to your unique ability.
Yes.
So editing video is not my expertise. So that's a really good place to outsource. And some of the best videos have been like with EOS said, hey, send us your video. And then they put it together and made it just absolutely gorgeous. So, find the pieces of this puzzle that you don't like. And that's where, bring in somebody to help you out.
Yeah. Well, when we had a question from Tony that said you use an outside company to post any of your content, and just by the sound of everyone going through it, I didn't hear that, but wanted to see if anyone that was using that option.
Mm-mm.
Awesome. All right. So, with the digital landscape and everything is changing pretty quickly and every single day. And Wendy, you were talking about being on Facebook, like right when it started and when it was free, Mason, to reach people. And that's obviously not the way it is anymore. What new trends or platforms or types of content are you excited to try to incorporate with the different shifts that we're seeing right now?
Well, I mean, Clubhouse, we haven't talked about Clubhouse. I don't know if y'all are on Clubhouse. I was on quite a bit at the beginning, and then it sort of felt like a waste of time. And I logged back in and I've got 1.7 million followers. I'm like, I don't know how that happened. So that might be something to kind of hop back into, because for sure a lot of people are on there and engaging. And I haven't personally used it. So I'd be curious if anybody's doing that.
I tried it a little at the first and didn't quite get it, and kind of the pauses. I think I like my content a little bit more, I guess, focused, whereas that just kind of free form stuff, to me, the same. I felt like I didn't really have time for it. What I'm researching right now is the SMS interactions, and even the, one to many through that channel, and then facilitating the one-on-one engagement, but hopefully not in a way that's overwhelming, because I've seen some interesting folks like Yes Theory has that engaged, and they're like, if you text us, one of us will respond to it. And that just felt like a very, kind of personable way to go about it, and makes the brand feel more accessible. And so I'm currently in research phase on that.
That's awesome. Elizabeth, what about you?
I am watching Clubhouse. Some of our meetings we have in that Clubhouse environment, I haven't quite figured it out. And I will be honest with everyone and say that every night before I go to bed, I watch TikTok. I just love it. So I haven't figured out how to put it into anything that's more than just fun, but I love it.
Yeah, I was wondering if TikTok would make an appearance in this, and that's my same pattern too. It's like get into bed and scroll for the next hour probably. But we're seeing that actually a lot with restaurants. So I don't know if anyone in here that's joining us today owns a restaurant, but we're seeing TikTok really be an incredible platform for that. And the best thing is you can literally take that video and post it to Instagram Reels. So again, repurposing that type of content again. People are also using it to create like short snippets for their blogs. So maybe they do 5 takeaways in a quick video and share that to TikTok as well. And then just healthcare has really dominated that platform. We've seen it with dermatologists kind of myth busting some different products and things that you always hear, because it does feel like there's a lot of like secret ways to get great skin. But we've seen a lot of doctors really and physicians come out on that platform to showcase. And I do want to talk about iOS 14. I think this is a big thing that's really impacting our industry. I'd love to hear from y'all how it's kind of impacted y'all. If you've seen anything, have you dove into it yet? And if not a worry, but we are seeing a lot of impacts and changes. Even that's going to start impacting email. And any insight that y'all have on iOS 14 so far in those changes?
You're talking about privacy?
Yeah. So basically with not able to, with Apple, you've got to they got to ask you on all the apps to be allowed to be tracked. So there's a lot loss of data that's happening for advertisers and just kind of overall platforms.
Well, I mean, if there's anything that COVID taught us is that, mass media is dead. It's been dead forever. This idea that everybody's watching Love Boat on Friday night that's just not true anymore. And what I saw is that businesses that have a true relationship with their customers, especially during COVID, were the ones that not only survived and they thrived as well. Be it restaurants, dressmakers, retail, real estate, whatever it is, if you had a relationship with your customers, you actually were able to do better coming out of COVID. Yeah. And so that's really where it starts is having a true relationship with because everything we're talking about could go away on social. Right. And so what does that actually look like? Are they engaged through email? Is it through text messaging? Are you calling people? Because the thing about real estate is that, we're not like noodles, right? Nobody's buying a house for dinner every week. So we actually have to be engaged with our clientele because the average consumer only buys a house once every 7 to 9 years. So we have to stay engaged with our customers at a pretty deep level. It's a major purchase when they do, and they come back to us if they had a good experience. But just continuing, is it events, right? What does that actually look like? Do the consumers feel like you truly care about them? Because then they will stay engaged with you. They'll open your emails and then providing good content, right? Yeah. So feeling like you care, you're giving back, and it's not just a one-way street where you're trying to extract money from them all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Aren't pension funds buying houses for dinner now?
That's true. Yeah.
On the privacy thing, I was originally a fan of big data and the personalized recommendations that came across for me. They were relevant, and I was buying them, and I was like, "That's great! I don't have to go searching for these things, and I have a place to start." And then I feel like on the call it societal side of it and the abuse that it was used for really made me skeptical on it. And so while it hasn't impacted me personally yet, or my company, because we are there's less of that kind of targeted needed for our advertising, and so I feel like it's worth it. That I'm okay with giving people more privacy, and because we've proved that corporations can't use that data in a responsible way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, it just made personal branding more important. It's about the person. It's about the people. It's not just about the logo that you're just shooting out content all the time. It's really about the individual that's driving a company and a brand forward. So before I open it up to questions, I just wanted to give each of you a second if you had any additional thoughts that you wanted to add.
Well, just to finish that, really, it's all about engaging content, right? Yeah. I mean, it really has gotten too intrusive. And so, the humor, the education aspect, I just feel like, you think about the Super Bowl ads and people actually turn on to see them because they're fun and they rewatch them. So this whole concept of things following you around the web, it's not good. And I think we as content providers, it's not about forcing people to see our stuff. It's about them wanting to see our stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, Mason, did y'all have anything else before I open it up to questions?
I don't think so.
Awesome.
I would just add, think big, act small, especially for those of you that are starting your personal branding or even your business journey. Sometimes when we start, we overestimate what we can do in a year and we completely underestimate what we can accomplish in 5 years. Yeah. And so this idea of going deep on something and going niche, which is what everybody is talking about here today, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or, whatever is your platform, go deep, right? Engage with your customers, provide relevant content. And then from there, you can add on instead of trying to do all things at once for everyone.
Right. Yeah. It's all about finding the right platform for you, your business, and just starting and just giving it a shot. like even Elizabeth, I loved your story on that. Like you just sat down and you did it one day, and look what it's become for you in the long run. I haven't seen any additional questions come in, but wanted to take a few minutes. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We're happy to answer any that you may have.
Wendy, are you going from this right to some other event?
No, why?
Oh, I thought it looked like June 15th through 17th. You're gonna some kind of workshop.
I don't know. I've got a lot going on this week. Too much.
Awesome. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions. Please connect with each of our panelists on social media. We can all drop our handles into the chat before we close out, if everyone wants to take a minute to do that. Oh, we do have a question that just came in. What is the absolute worst personal brand mistake?
Worst personal brand mistake. Jeez.
Oh, and it looks like we lost Elizabeth at the end.
Well, I would just say, I think the worst personal brand mistake is for people to assume that their brand identity is their business. And I said this before, and I see this all the time in the real estate industry. It drives me crazy when their Instagram handle is @Idaho Realtor. And
Yeah.
I know that in real estate, there's a 90% fail rate for realtors. And so you've just blown any kind of influence that you've developed. If you decide to, move on and do something different.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I know you dropped off for a second. Welcome back. One of the questions we had is, what is the absolute worst personal brand mistake? If you had anything you wanted to add to that.
I'll just say, be very careful in the political field.
Yes.
I try to stay totally out of it, and I do on occasion just mention that maybe not bringing politics into LinkedIn is necessarily a good thing. And, even that was seen as not a good thing, controversial. But I did want to say on the LinkedIn, and I hope nobody has already done this, you can rename your LinkedIn URL basically to say whatever you want it to be. So since I'm Elizabeth Davis with, 14,000 or 20,000 people with my name, just being able to add, CEO to the end allows me to have a little bit more of a brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess not a mistake, but a piece of advice that I thought was funny and has been proven out in high profile case studies over and over again is don't ever put anything in writing you don't want read aloud at a deposition.
A good piece of advice.
Even on your personal brand, if you think it's on your personal page and it's not going to affect your company, that can be extremely false.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here today. And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for joining. It was such a great conversation. I appreciate y'all joining today. Also, at Zilker Media, we are doing social media audits. If you're interested, for anyone who joined any of the series of the Texas CEO event, I'm dropping my email into the chat. Feel free to email me if you're interested in that, and I'll be happy to connect. But other than that, I hope everyone has a great day and a fantastic week. If you're in the Austin area, stay cool. It's extremely hot outside.
This was awesome. Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you all so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Magazine. Appreciate it.
Right.
Thanks, everyone.